I accused Mrs. Baca of stepping down from the chair position tonight so she wouldn't have to go over the goals, but I think we can actually do this pretty quickly. I know that one goal that we had last year when we set our goals was to have fewer goals, and I think we've done that.
We did.
And I think we should have that as a goal every year.
To consolidate our goals.
No,
would be a
before,
little bit
because
more-
just to explain to Ms.
In a
Sauter,
few years, we wouldn't have any goals.
the problem we were having was we were setting too many goals, and you know what happens if you don't get to, you spread yourself too thin. And so we were kind of consolidating some of those goals into simpler goals, streamlining.
Okay.
And I think we did, from the school committee side, there just to remind people, these are both for superintendent and school committee, there are 5 areas of the goals cover: policy, budget, actually 4. So we even cut down from 5 to 4, just right then. 4, policy, budget, communication, and strategic planning. You know, obviously a lot of these are ongoing. Things like the budget, strategic planning. I believe, David, we're going to be looking at the strategic plan beginning, hopefully, this coming school year. One thing that you'll always see every year is that we get so engrossed in the budget process and trying to find enough money to continue to run the schools the way we see fit that we sometimes don't get to a lot of these goals. One I wanted to point to, though, was under policy, which I don't think we've ever brought to a head. And I think either way, whether we're going to make any changes or not, and that's the whole issue of school start times. A lot of research was done by Mrs. Davis, and I was also involved. I still, from doing that research, would like to see any movement that we could make in the future to trying to get our high school kids to school starting a little bit later than 7:30. I know a lot of other districts are doing it. In fact, I think a lot of the districts in the Cape Ann League are starting to move in that direction also. So I don't know if we need to appoint another committee, but I think this may be something that the policy subcommittee could look at moving forward. I know from the studies, even 15 minutes or half an hour for the kids at the high school age seem to be valuable in terms of reduction of tardiness, exactly, better attendance, better able to pay attention in the morning classes, just all kinds of issues, safer driving because they're sleeping a little longer, etc. So from my point of view, if we could look at that, we could go over these. I won't go over these, each of these individually. I will say on the policy, you saw the results of our policy subcommittee tonight. We approved three pretty important policies for the revised policies for the district. And I know
Accommodations for religious.
right. We also did the accommodations for religious holidays.
Yeah, we've actually been pretty active in,
Yeah.
in policy this year.
And I know the policy subcommittee on a fairly regular basis looks at older policies at the direction of David to determine if we need to update or change any of those. So I think the policy committee has been pretty effective, and I would like to see that school start times. You know,
So what you're saying, you want to keep that in the goals?
I'd like to be brought to a head, yeah, some way. Then we're not going to change. We haven't made any changes yet, but I don't know if anybody else has any comments on policy goals.
No, I'm happy to, research it
That
and
issue.
actually put
I
it
have-
into a short report.
I have a lot of information I can send
So
to
you just
you.
give me whatever you've got, and
Yeah.
I'll just summarize it and
And
say
I-
what we know, we don't know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I, for one, would like to see what the other Cape Ann school districts are doing as well.
I know
I know my
Amesbury's,
old high school, it starts at 7:45.
yeah,
and it's-
Amesbury's later. I think Linfield is later now. A lot of them are starting around 8 o'clock or so. So I just like, and the big issue we've always had is the cost in terms of how do we reorient the busing so we can get everybody where they need to get and keep the costs the same. So, but I do think the policy committee has done a lot of work over the past several months getting a lot of these policies completed and approved.
The easy way to solve the problem is you just raise the cost of the bus service
So no one,
for high
for
school.
high school.
And
No one takes
there
the bus.
won't be any busing problem, and you can start it.
Well, that's the other issue. We've looked at that several times in terms of how many kids actually take the bus to high school. And
It doesn't save you much on the contract though, because of
No.
the way the buses
Right.
work, so
Okay.
it would save you some.
But it would eliminate the problem
Right.
that we have of
Right.
recycling.
Right, the buses too, right. The budget, I think everybody knows, we continue to struggle with budgeting, with having enough funds to just maintain what we're offering on a year-to-year basis. I think what the superintendent and administration and we've done this year, working together to come up with a budget that works, provided we get more money in October, and also provided we get the ARRA fund information. I'm assuming we still have not gotten information on how to apply for those funds.
Will be out till the end of August.
That's incredible to me.
That makes
I mean,
no sense
we're working on,
whatsoever.
that's 2 months, that'll be 2 months into the
You know,
budget.
An advisory just came out, and I think that we won't see the guidelines until mid to late August. And then secondly, school superintendents were cautioned to not plan to actually receive money until the end of the second quarter. And thirdly, you should be very careful on how you are in other words, there's no decision yet. If the money doesn't come out until the second quarter, can you retroactively apply that money to expenses in the first 2 quarters? And that's a question. So that basically the caution is, if you are targeting any of this for the budget, spend against your budget first and delay on the stimulus fund. And the other issue that was raised at the superintendent's conference last week by the commissioner was, and others, was that there's a strong possibility of a mid-year reduction.
Right.
So they're saying, well, depending on how the state funds turn out.
Yes.
We might or might not give you any of this money.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's my
That's
feeling.
supposed to be passed right on down.
And it may be similar in scope to what happened in May,
Mhm.
when state funds were, stimulus money was used to offset the Chapter 7.
And that's an outrage.
Yeah.
That
The whole
is an
thing's
absolute
outrageous.
outrage.
It's an outrage because the state has $1 billion worth of new taxes coming in, and you'd think they'd actually solve education and fund
Put
it
some towards
properly.
school, right.
And raising the sales tax, et
Right.
cetera. I mean,
Where's
what
the
do we do?
priority?
Right.
Where is the
There
priority?
is no priority on education.
Yeah.
There is no priority on education.
But regardless
There you
of
go.
how outrageous it is, that it means we have to plan for it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
part of the problem is that you can't wait until January,
No,
so we
we
need
can't.
to,
You can't plan for that.
well, we
Well, we have-
need to be as conservative as possible now. Because if we wait until January, February, to find out that we don't have funds, it's gonna be twice as hard to budget for the rest of the year.
The Finance
So we're
Planning
going-
Committee, Mr. Mosseri has asked us to have a plan at October town meeting as to how we would deal with up to, he said up to, I think up to a 5%
Right.
budget cut. Because if we lost the stimulus money we have in there is 2% of our budget approximately.
Right.
There's, I think there's a good chance that we could see further state aid cuts this year. So we need to work on that before the October town meeting, the administration does, and then we'll obviously have a look at that and approve it as to what we would cut, how we would deal with it. And we are already, just to remind people, we're already 400 and some odd thousand in the hole going into October town meeting. We need to find a good sum of money to cover our current budget shortfall, so, right.
What
One,
other superintendents responding to this?
Same way we
Really just don't know what to, yeah.
one other issue, a couple other issues I had on the budget. One is to complete contract negotiations with the NREA. Those are still in process. I think it's fair to say we're making progress.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I think we ended the last meeting, we don't have an agreement, but I think we're very close to a meeting of the minds on what has to be done. Would you?
I would agree with that. Our next meeting is scheduled for
Next week.
next Tuesday.
Yeah.
At 1 o'clock. But I think we're making some progress, and hopefully fairly soon we'll have something to bring back to the committee.
Right. So, one other issue I had on the budget, we continue to talk about in terms of capital projects. One of our big issues was our athletic facilities, and with the help of the Parks and Recs Commission and with LUC and with the Hillview, we're gonna solve a big part of that issue with the project that'll be starting at the high school hopefully next week.
We really do solve a huge.
Right, because of the amount of time you can use that field.
Yeah, well, with the maintenance issues
Right.
and the, all that.
We constantly had the middle school field on our, on our agenda to address, and we haven't done that. Hopefully by having the turf field, we'll maybe be able to get to that, because we might not have to use it, and we
Right,
could.
we could put that field down
Right.
as far as doing something.
It could do have some improvements, but it's just not being used, and then work on that. Anybody else have anything on the budget?
You know, can we go back to policy for just 1 second?
Sure.
I wanna do a complete examination of all our policies relating to how we use electronic communication. I think
Right.
we need to do that, we just need to figure it out.
That's something we've talked about, and we really should get to that in this
in
year.
this cycle, yeah.
Because it is an issue, not saying it's inappropriate, but teachers are communicating on a regular basis with students
We need
by
to-
email, and we need to make sure that there's clear policy on how that is done and not
Exactly.
done. Facebook, MySpace, everything, whatever they're using, Twitter, everything
Right,
else.
and we know there's some sensational cases that have come out
Right.
relating to electronic communication, we
Right.
need to protect ourselves and also protect students and family and community, so
I agree, that probably should be a priority.
I would say that's a huge priority.
Moving forward that, and if you could, we can maybe address by the end of the year, address the school start times.
That's fine, I think
Would
we'll
it be-
probably do. I'll present something in August, one or the other or both.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just had a couple of comments under the budget there. Some of our objectives, like to explore all opportunities to cooperate with town departments and other school districts on finance and revenues. Certainly with town departments, I think we implemented a number of years ago now the finance planning team meetings where the chair and the vice chair of the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, and the finance committee all meet at least once a month. And again, I think that speaks to the cooperation between the various departments. Some people probably don't know that this happens, although we do refer to it from time to time.
We also have a member on the fiscal advisory committee.
We're the fiscal advisory
So
committee. We've
that's-
also,
right.
but we've also, I mean, tremendous cooperation. You heard from Kyle Nelson tonight about the implementing the new accounting system, which has been a joint effort between the town side and the school department side. The turf field is another example of absolute cooperation, the tennis courts between the Hillview, the LUC, the recreation department, the Board of Selectmen, the school committee. So I think, again, people sometimes overlook the amount of planning and work and cooperation that goes on amongst all the elected officials and a lot of appointed officials in the town.
I do think that if you read other local newspapers, you always read about bickering between the various boards. I think this town does an unbelievable job in terms of cooperation and communication.
And in the end, we get some results from it.
Yes.
When I first came on the board last year, I went around looking for ways to try to improve the coordination and the cost. I was also on the fiscal advisory
Right.
committee, and so looking at ways to kind of coordinate efforts. And I was absolutely amazed and delighted with what I found, that we had different parts of the organizations all working together to coordinate their
Right.
efforts. And in addition to, within the town, the coordination efforts with other towns to try to make the best use of our resources and their resources to minimize cost. That's a very nice thing to find, because I didn't expect that.
Right. On communications, we continue to hold our one meeting at each school. I personally think that's been successful. I think the principals and the school communities really enjoy coming out and showing us what they're doing at each school, and I think that's worked very well. We held more budget forums this year. We held our regular budget hearings. I think that with the website, as Mrs. Bowden mentioned earlier, we have more information on the website, and I think that's helpful. Especially, I know I spent a lot of time at the high school site, and Mr. Bernard and his staff do a great job of keeping that updated. If anybody has any ideas on communications, we will at some point sit down and talk about new goals for this current year. So